What's going on, YouTube? And welcome again to the Holy Dome. This is Reborn coming back at you, and my name is Felipe. We got brother Pastor Ed. I want to thank you again for clicking this video and watching it. Every view matters the most to us. But let's kick it off by saying, how's it going?
You know how it is. It's
cold
colder
now. One video I'm sure you'll finally get where he'll say, I'm comfortable in the weather. That'll probably be
June.
I was going to say.
If we do it outside in June.
That's not a bad idea. Maybe in the future episodes we'll have like a different layout. Maybe do an outside episode.
One at the beach.
One at that.
Yeah.
Put a green screen for that one.
Yeah. Have the hats and everything.
We'll have some theme ones maybe
Glasses.
in the future.
Oh.
But man, if we do it outside, you'll just see me drenched in sweat and him comfortable for some reason.
Yeah. My feet will finally be warm.
But let's get this kicked off. I mean, we're here now at episode 4. We got a couple. It'll probably be episode 6 or 7 technically if you count the 2-parters. Mm-hmm. But for a whole new topic, this will be episode 4. And this one actually blew out of the gate. I mean, on votes on that recent poll, and I find it pretty cool because a lot of people, I guess, don't realize how much what they do in their own personal life impacts what they do with their children. Mm-hmm. And the winner was, how do we instill a biblical worldview in our children?
That's a good one. And that's obviously, if we start at the very beginning, Adam and Eve they were only 50-50 on that.
Yeah.
Remember, they had things right there in front of them and it didn't always work out well. It's a great question because of the way that the children are pulled and the parents are pulled. I think it has to start with it has to be genuine yourself, right? As a parent, it has to be genuine. We can't be like, I know parents, I've heard this, parents that don't go to church send their kids to church, and we appreciate that. We want to be able to help with that.
Honestly,
and then,
I started that way.
And something happens, and as the kids get older, they get out and something goes haywire in their lives, and the parents go, I don't know what the problem was. I sent them to church. I guess it didn't do any good. It's like, Wait a second. We only had them for just a few minutes a week, you know, and you got them the rest of the time. So we can get blamed for a couple percentage points, but you get the rest of it. And the deal with it is genuine. You don't send your kids to church. You take them with you to church. Mm-hmm. That's just an example.
Don't make it as a chore.
Yeah, and it's like, well, come on, we gotta go to church.
And they see that. I mean, children mimic.
They hear that. They hear that.
When I taught the kids and everything, I mean, I heard it all when it comes to about the parents. Mm-hmm. Like the kids will dish.
Oh yeah,
they will dish.
Oh yeah. I had a preacher friend of mine one time, and he couldn't get anybody to stay in the nursery with the little toddler kids. Mm-hmm. And so he goes, okay. So he goes back and had one of his other leaders teach or preach. And he come back the next Sunday, and he preached what the kids told him about what their parents were doing. And he goes, I never had a problem getting that nursery filled.
That was like last year's VBS when I kept on asking who all the parents were going to come. And one kid, they were first grade, stood up, we're not going to be able to make it. Well, how come? My parents are going to a party that night. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm going to my grandparents. Tell your grandparents to come.
You can't give your kids something you don't have.
Yeah.
And I think we're so private with our spirituality, with our Christianity, that we're even so private that our spouses don't know it and our kids don't know it.
Well,
and I think it's important that we have to speak it.
Mm-hmm.
I remember coming home and maybe got a bonus or something from work, and I brought the kids together and I said, listen, God gave us this. It wasn't me. It was him. And so they heard it. They heard it. And they knew. There was never a debate about whether they were going to church or not. They just got up and went. One of them found out that if you don't get up and get ready to go, when it's time to go, that you'll wear what you wore to bed to church. And that stopped that after one time. not just being there, but being on time, which is early, so that you can fellowship with other people and don't try to run out the door after that. The kids see that. Kids see, okay, we went to church. How do we do it? Well, we came in late, we left early, and all this kind of stuff. And well, was it real? I remember sitting in the pew with me and my sister would between my mom and dad, and my mom and dad had their Bibles open, and I could look at my dad's Bible and it had marks in it, and I could look at my mom's Bible and it had marks in it, and it was worn. And even as a little kid, I knew those Bibles have been used.
Mm-hmm.
And you sit there and you be quiet and you behave, and you maybe listen to some of it, or some of the message you catch, some of it goes over your head, but you sat there with your parents because this was a family thing that we were doing. And so I saw that in them. We see that. The kids see it in their parents. Is God real to you? Yes. Well, guess what? When you have those options as the adult, I can do this or I can do that, and you go, well, let's just do that. Kids see that.
Yeah.
Right? Well, it's a family. I got really just on my mom. My grandpa, her dad, was not saved, and we went to church. We went to church when we went down to their church. They lived in Oklahoma, we'd drive down there. We took our church clothes. We were going to church. We went to church. And you think, well, come on, when you're in another, does it make a difference? Actually, we might be in different churches, but it's the same God that's speaking in all those churches, number one. And number two, there's a testimony. My grandpa wasn't saved, and my mom prayed for my grandpa for 35 years. I believe it was with her testimony that she gave us. And he finally got saved. And he got saved because they were persistent. You go, well, that's up to them. Yeah, but they need to see it.
Yeah. And
with that in mind, the kids can read the Bible, but they need to see the Bible being lived out. Because let's be frank, we've just talked in the past about adults trying to figure out how to live what the Bible says. How hard is it, do you think, for the kids to do that?
Right. To
say, here's how we live it. Now, Deuteronomy chapter 6, I believe, talks about this. And he says, Hear, O Israel, observe to do it, talking about keeping the commandments, that it may be well with thee, and that you may increase mightily, as the Lord God of thy fathers hath promised thee, in the land that floweth with milk and honey. He says, now, we take this and we read it and we go, well, that was for them. Why is it just for them? Now, specifically a land flowing with milk and honey, I'm not looking for. But will God bless me? Yes. What do? I keep his commandments. Mm-hmm. My kids are going to, but this is how he does. So then he gives them the Shema here in verse 4. He says, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, and thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thine heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy might, or with all thy strength. And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thine heart.
Right.
And he says, and thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children. So where does it start? He didn't start with, here's how you take care of your kids. He started with, this is how you take care of you, right? Mm-hmm. You take care of you, and then now you can teach it to their kids. And it says, talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, when thou walkest by the way, when thou liest down, when thou risest up. And what he's saying is it's not a Sunday morning Sunday school and in church, and then we're done for the week, or Sunday night, or however many times you go. It's not just put on and take off. It's like we've been saying. It is God is a person that I'm in love with, and I want my kids to fall in love with him too.
Yeah.
Right. And so they're going to get their perception of God by how I live, and by how I live out the Scripture.
Right.
Not just that I do it, but there's times he says, teach them as you're going along. As you're walking down and go, do you see this? How the birds do this? Or, do you ever notice how the birds migrate? Yeah, they're well, Daddy, why are the birds flying this way? A whole bunch of birds. And he, knowing the Scripture, he would say, God is leading them to warmer weather. See, and God's taken them to a place where they can stay for the summer till it gets warm here again, and then they'll bring them back again. And so it's God is engaged in every aspect of their conversation. When you talk, and when you sit in your house, when you're walking, when you're getting up in the morning, they see those things. I remember waking up in the mornings, even older, driving up to my dad's house, and be spending the night, get up early the next morning, and he'll be over getting coffee, but his Bible's open on the table. That's his morning thing that he's doing. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if my dad's a believer or not. If he never told me, I can look at his life and go, he's got a relationship with God. My mom, how she, same way. Get up in the morning, the Bible would be open. Sometimes you'd come home in the afternoon from school, and the Bible would be open somewhere, be over at the couch or somewhere. Where she was doing this, right?
That was the same when I first got married, and I lived with Chrissy in her parents' house. Every morning I woke up to get ready for school to go to UTA. Walked out, and first thing I saw, a cup of coffee, and her Bible was always open.
Yeah.
Every morning. And I always knew that was the thing I was going to wake up to every day. And if I ever didn't see it, something was wrong. That was my first thought.
Yeah.
But also growing up, like you were mentioning, I actually was one of the percentage of the kids that went to church by myself, not with my parents. And I would say we were CEOs. We went to church when it was Christmas, Easter, and all other important holidays. Mm-hmm. That's what I knew and everything. And I didn't even know VBS till I was way, way, way older, and I was thrown into it, and I fell in love with it and stuff. But I grew up with that. But one thing I know as a core memory for me was my papi, my grandpa. And anytime I spoke to him, I know he lived through God and everything, because every conversation we had, if I had a bad day, if I had a rough time, and I called him and stuff, and always he brought about God and what's leading and trying to help guide me and show, look what happened here, and look how God blessed you here, though. Yeah. He always had that, and I can guarantee I don't think there was one conversation that did not have that implied. Same with my grandma. And then it's just a core memory that I don't think I'll ever forget, because growing up, I saw that. And that's why me as a father, I want my two girls to be able to see that I lived through God, and that they have that core memory and how they should be living through it.
They see you sitting there listening. We do Bible asking questions. Dad's engaged. His Bible, what does his Bible look like? Marked up and when they're praying, is he praying? And Mama too. And so when Moses gives this commandment from God to the children of Israel, he doesn't start with the kids. He starts with the parents. You've got to live it yourself. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Everything you got. And then you're teaching this to your children. If I don't have a relationship with God where I have I'd be careful with this, where I experience God blessing my life, I'm not going to share it with my kids because I don't recognize it. But when I say, you see that? You see this wreck up here, up ahead? Yeah, you know what? If we had left the restaurant or the church or left that activity, if we'd have left 10 minutes sooner, that would have been us. See how God is working this out for us?
That's a great point.
I remember Grant, she used to sing, he's got his angels watching over me, every move I make. She talks about how they just missed, there was a wreck, like we just said, and all these things that we never know. When we're willing to stay, remember, he's the one leading us, we stay, and then that happens up there, you go, man, that could have been me. And
that's how one God, perception of it.
Or God tells you, he says, you leave now, and you got to get out of here now, and you leave. And then shortly after that, you find out something happened, right? Someone came in and did something, and you go, wow, that was God. One is God. God may have been telling me not to be there in the first place, but God was really telling me to get out. And, if I get those, it's time to go feelings, you lost that love and feeling. When it's time to go, I get, because If God's telling me to get out of this situation, I get out and move. So why? Because I've experienced staying, and know what happens, or things don't happen the way you want it to, but you never know, and
Right.
you
And
never know what it is. You just have to be. You experience these things. Can you imagine? Can you imagine Moses sitting down with his kids and going, "Let me tell you what happened to me today.
Right.
I was out on the backside of the desert, and you know that one old sheep that always runs away? Yeah. Well, it ran away, and I found it. And as I was bringing it back I looked over to my left, and I saw a bush that was on fire. And I go, okay, but it wasn't burning. But you just said it was burning. It was burning, but it wasn't burning. And now it sounds like some Adam Sandler shtick, right? It was, but it wasn't. But imagine him. It says, well, what do you think it was? I know exactly what it was. What was it? It was God speaking to me. He told me, you know what he told me to do? What? He told me to take my sandals off because I'm on holy ground. And I sat there and I talked to God, and God told me what he wanted me to do with my life. You imagine, and he's sharing this with his kids.
Mm-hmm.
When we see Israel failing, when we see them failing, we got to understand that failing is not just them; it's a failing of the parents.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? They didn't remember the things. Why didn't they remember it? Because the parents never shared it with them. That's why I had somebody ask me, says, "Why does God keep bringing up Egypt? We got them out of Egypt, got them out of Egypt." Because their parents wouldn't share it with them, so God did, and He kept reminding them of those things. So I think it's important that the parent do it, and the parent recognize, and the parent, I like that. I hear parents go, I want my kids to make their own decisions about religion. You don't have them make their own decisions about whether they're going to go to the doctor or go to school, or whether they can wear clothes or go naked to school. Right. You make decisions for them. They need that help. And God is saying, you help them as they go along and let them see, we're going to do this, and we're going to do this way. Why? Because this is what the Bible tells us. They see me living it, and they see me telling them, you're going to live by this, right? This is the way we're to live. And they need to see themselves that, you worked for that. God gave you a mind so that you could get that good grade on the test. You did your work. God did His work, and look what happened.
But here's the thing. There's always two sides to a coin, right?
Sure.
We're here explaining the positives about it and how we should see the perception. And it's easier to say all these things, but some people don't realize the negative side of it, the back side of the coin. When something negative happens, it's, why God? Or why are you letting this always happen to me? And when your kids see that, now you're justifying that God is also a bad guy.
I've got in my past, and it's not with kids necessarily, but with actually women that would come to church and their husbands wouldn't come, and they say, well, I can't get him to come, what's going on? And then they would talk to me and probably share what they didn't really want to share. And I was telling him about what we did here, and I was so mad at this. And like, well, the way you talk bad about the church, if I was your husband, I wouldn't want to come either.
Right. You just made the church look
negative. And you're not, of course, your husband doesn't know this. You're not telling on the church, you're telling on you, right? And there's I'm not going to go because that's the way she feels about it. Well, we give them an excuse not to. And there's a balance. There is a rigidness to, these are the things we're going to do, and then there's also this, let's pray and ask God to help us with. I don't have to pray and ask God whether I should go to church or to read my Bible, or if I should pray, or if I should witness to other people, or if I should love thy neighbor. I don't have to pray and ask God about those things. He's already told me to do those. God, you want to go to church? Yeah.
Yeah. Duh.
Yeah.
You want to drink water today?
Yeah. So there's things I don't have to ask. Now I may have to ask, Lord, help me with my heart. Help me to hear what you want me to hear. Lord, help me to see what you want me to see when I'm reading my Bible. Again, when I'm praying, I'm listening. And so there's aspects of that I do ask about, but I don't ask whether to do it. I just ask about how, and teaching the kids to do that, reading Bible passages. If we read the Bible and going back to the Moses thing here, Moses telling his kids a story, and I think it's as parents, and it's okay to go buy or go get one of those Bibles for kids, or I haven't had to use one or you looked at one in a long time, but they got it where it's very much paraphrased and it's just storyline of things, not the depth and the details,
right, the simplicity.
There's they're not going to read about the Shama in Deuteronomy chapter 6. They're going to read, you're to love God with it, but taking the scripture, and you got to be careful with those books, but taking the scripture and then taking that book and reading it to them and letting them visualize themselves. Can you imagine? I've played this, and I've done it for a long time. But you guys have heard me. I play games with the mental images of who these Bible characters are. Right? You can't change Moses. Moses looks like Charlton Heston. We know that, right? But I always, reading Gideon and studying Gideon, it just hit me. Gideon, because his whole story is about fear. So he always reminds me of Don Knotts and Barney Fife, and the Ghost and Mr. Chicken. He's always afraid. And that's Gideon. And so you just kind of go through these. Zacchaeus is Danny DeVito. Right? That's my mind, you're going, you're sick. Well, you're not the first one to say that. Huh?
And Samson's Fabio.
Yeah. Can you see him with the hair blown and
has a head and shoulders blown?
Yeah, he's got a donkey's jaw in his hand, and it's just and then if you can, I think whatever those novels are where he's holding Bathsheba, but behind him she's got a pair of shears cutting his hair, right? Something like that. But that's it. But you bring those things to life when you can show those kind of things or give them this kind of mental images.
And kids work great off of that. And I think another problem is that I don't think parents give the kid an opportunity to show their intelligence, because to me, when I was teaching these kids, my gosh, they are super intelligent. Yeah. They can retain a lot and memorize a lot of things.
Sometimes you'll give them an example and they'll go, it's kind of like so-and-so, and you go, yeah, it is.
It is, seriously.
And that's another reason why, and part of the teaching style that I try to bring forward is bringing these kind of things to give a mental picture so it's easier to share it with somebody else too. Not always, but at least you got that, like Gideon is Don Knotts, go share that. And then now you got a mental picture of how to play that out. Fabio and Charlton Heston and, all these characters like this, but you can't get
that out of my head.
Which one? Danny DeVito?
Danny DeVito.
It is so true. It's so true. It's like, that's got to be just some of the, I think of that Twins with him and Arnold Schwarzenegger and how he was always money. I go,
I just think of this GIF that I always watch. I see what Danny was. I started blasting everybody and everything.
So anyway, you can and make these things interesting to them. The Bible's so boring. Not the Bible I read. Now, I already said before, we talked in one of the episodes about, I'll read through the genealogies, and sometimes I pick up stuff, but I don't deal deeply with that. And I don't, when they're talking about how the tabernacle was made and how they cut the temple at certain sizes, I've already read through that, and I don't spend as much time. I read it, but I don't spend as much time on it. And so that's, I think, where we get the Bible's boring. But you go through there and you find these storylines and just focus on those storylines, and then you can share that. But at the same time, you got to be able to take and internalize it and say, you know what, I'm like Saul sometimes. Yeah. I forget to call on God until honestly, things are starting to hit the fan.
I can relate to that because I know there's been times that I overlook those opportunities that are actually given, and it's almost to a point where it's blatant. Like, hey, here's a great chance to show your two girls, even though one's a baby, you still want to show the big sister, bring both of them and have an opportunity to show that you're trying to immerse them with it. But I can say I have been guilty for a lot of those opportunities, and it's almost to a point where it's like, dang it, I wish I could turn back time for those. But you will always be given more opportunities, and that's when you have to realize
You don't know when it switches off up here, though.
Right.
And
Right.
that's the thing that's dangerous, because you're going to find out. I've learned this the hard way, is you only going to get so much time, and then it's gone.
Right. Because and this is a great way because you're 75 ish, 40.
My knees feel that way.
Yeah. Regardless, you have wisdom. I'm gaining the wisdom. We're in that phase where I have, I've been a father for 7 years. We'll be 8 in July for her birthday, and then I got another one. And it's like time's already flown those 8 years.
Yeah.
But you've already got it to where now you have your grandkids and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to have that wisdom that you get to share with everybody. Like, for example, in church, you have that opportunity where the kids get to be in the main service.
Yeah.
And that's a great thing for my children because not only do they see the importance of where the house is,
right?
They get to see that I'm here listening, I'm here asking questions, and they get to witness that. And there have been moments where the kids have asked questions and stuff, which now you're showing that they are part of the church family.
Yep.
It's not like and I'm not putting the blame game, so don't take this out of context, where there might be other congregations where here's the kids, here's the adults, here's the wall.
Yeah. Well, that's I've heard I've read the books, already gone. I've already read, you go through these analytical Barna research, listen to preachers talk, and how do we get, we're losing our kids. And I sat down and looked at it too and thought through it and meditated on it. And it's like, what do we do? What do we do, and what do the big churches do? The other churches, the family comes into the car. It comes in the car, maybe. They come in the car, and then as soon as they get there, the kids go to that building, and the teens go to that building, and the parents go to that building, and even the parents split up, and the men's and the women's, and it's like all the wisdom is lost, and they're part of that group, and they're part of that group, and you're part of those two groups. But where do you ever become part of the church?
Right, you created separate communities.
Absolutely. You build 4 different churches, right? Many churches out of that. So now they have to be, quote, sold to move from their grade school to junior high to high school to college and career. They have to keep getting sold again on the next one, and then finally they go into church, and that's boring. Well,
right.
One is it shouldn't be. Number 2, there should be a depth of growth through that entire cycle that they're getting deeper stuff when they get to the church service, to being part of the regular worship.
Right, that's
stuff.
why you always start our service with backflips and stuff to get them on.
Yeah, well,
come to our church and
I try to do what I can do.
What was that
not as limp as
that he was like, I'm actually going to crucify myself.
Oh, yeah. I know there's a one we watched. Yeah.
I don't remember the name of all these people.
He was like, oh, yeah, they were getting a bunch of
people. We'll do a live crucifixion.
Yeah, we're not going to do that.
No.
But that's the stuff that, so the child, we need to get the family together. We're losing the family. Well, we're doing it.
Yeah.
And then when you get in groups like we have Sunday school, we have our little ones with the adults in there, and they're not paying attention. Well, they're coloring and doing their thing. They're answering questions too, and they're going. And I'll say, well, what about this? And they'll speak up before the adults. Of course, they don't raise their hand. They just blur it out. But they go, that's right. That's right. So they're, hey, parents, they're listening.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is that they're building a rapport with the pastor of the church too. And that's what's needed, because the pastor's over there, and he's got his own entrance and exit, and he's only parking space, and you don't really get up to the pastor and get to speak to him. And
right.
I've had people that were new coming to church, and they were going, they wouldn't talk, and I'd come talk to them. They go, "You're coming to talk to us?" Well, yeah. It's like, oh, well, you want to come by and give us a visit? Well, yeah. Especially if you tell me when dinner is.
Right.
But no, but they just not expecting that anymore, and that's what's lost. And like we were saying a few a few episodes before. You got young marrieds, and they go to the young married department. Well, when do they ever hear the old folks talking about like what we just did? I think on the last episode or so, where we're like, happy wife, happy life. You don't have to.
When my wife says she's not hungry, I still know what she wants to get. I still bring it home.
You win the argument, you still lose the war. And they don't hear that, and so that is a microcosm of the church benefiting how our more mature folks.
You just said it.
I already said it. I'm one of them.
Already out there.
I'm one of them.
Context.
They these kids. We don't sell the kids these days, and young marrieds these days, and they're saying this, but they have no concept of what they're going through.
Mm-hmm.
Now they may be right. They're just they need to buckle up and go, but they don't hear it. Why? Because they're in their group over there and this group over here. It's like, well, what if we got the dynamics together and young marrieds talking about, well, it's so rough and he doesn't do this and he doesn't do that. And it kind of reminds me of an old Medea thing. She goes, make some grits.
Oh, yeah.
Now don't do that. Don't do it. If you don't know what happened in the movie, if you know what happened, don't do it. But she, the one of the ladies speak up and said, well, sweetheart, what you need to do is, and they get it, and they get it from, well, that's the older generation. Hey, listen, we're still human beings. Solomon said there's nothing new under the sun. No matter what age you are, young married, old married, widowed, or whatever, you're not gonna experience anything in your marriage that I haven't experienced. Right. And there may be some things in your marriage that you experienced that I didn't because I was smart enough to avoid it, or I wasn't smart enough to do it. Right. Either way, positive or negative. But that's what's missing. That's what we try to bring here.
Because not just that, like you have the mature members of our church and everything, and by having my daughter in there. She talks to everybody.
There you go. That's what we want.
She will goof around and talk her head off, and she has no. How would you phrase this? She's very much of an extrovert now. She's always have been, but that helps actually, and you'd be impressed. Like if you're saying your kids just doesn't have like the social skills or anything like that. Start immersing them in that and having them build that relationship with those members and stuff, and they will have no problem.
The older folks love seeing their kids, and getting up with that's why when we start our worship service, we start with the kids' songs.
I'm pretty sure that's why they last longer. They're taking away the kids' energy and everything.
they get up there and they sing, and they go, well, why are you doing that? So they're part of the church, well, because they think. And I kind of picked this up. It's been a while. We've been doing it for a while, but I picked this up because the older folks were talking about the music for the younger folks, which, the millennials. And the songs are different, and we're doing this and doing that. And I thought, okay, well, we need to mix that up. And I'm going, okay, let's make sure we're doing it right. And go, oh, wait a second. We forgot about the other demographic that's part of the church, too. So... nobody, if they do, I don't ever hear is like, well, why are we singing all those kids' songs? Because the kids are part of the church too.
Well, what's great is that you get such a large engagement when the kids are up. Like, mean, like
people are watching to see if they can win $100,000 on the
right. Wait for that one moment, but still, they're so engaged with it.
Yeah.
And the kids, having those kids be in those opportunities helps. One, you're building up a strong foundation for them.
Yeah.
And then now they're seeing how much the church can be interactive versus all that stuff. So, like I said earlier, they will absorb. They're sponges. They will absorb everything. And going back to the household where it all needs to begin with, because like you said earlier, you only have so much time at the church, and we're talking about the church and all the great about it. Let's pull it to the house and everything. Now you got to show them everything about that lifestyle at the home.
Yep. If you, we would have the kids, and if we were watching a movie or something, and someone would slip up with a word, you'd hear everybody, bad word, bad word.
Earmuffs.
Do it. And then we'd stop the movie and they go, "What are we doing?" So we don't need to watch this, you know. And so they see it. They see, well, yeah, okay, yeah, we're Christian and we read the Bible and we do this stuff, but yeah, we'll watch this stuff. No, we won't. We'll turn it off.
There's been times where there's been, especially
that.
Like in Netflix, I've noticed, like if you select kids only, there is some stuff on there that I was super shocked that
I don't even know what they could watch these days.
Right, you know? Like and it was there was cartoons I grew up that Harper loved watching, especially like Pokemon and stuff, and then I still watch it with her. But there was another show which it was for kids, but there was some things on there that was very explicit on the word, and I mean, I was there cooking, and I like whipped my head. I'm like,
stop it.
I was like, no. She goes, why? It's like, you know why? And I explained and everything. He's like, you understand now why? She goes, yeah. So
that's why Warner Brothers, Bugs Bunny, Elmer Fudd, Sylvester the Cat, Foghorn Leghorn. That's the best cartoons. And they go, well, the kids are going to run off a cliff. Well, you know what? Teach your kids not to run off a cliff.
Right now, they're started practicing with the bed first. They're going to experience it.
Yeah. How'd you get that bump? I hit the fan.
but then you have a lot of the general public will say is like, well, you got to teach them those stuff. They're going to learn it one day or another. I'm like, right now, my child is a child.
Yeah.
Right now, they don't need to worry about that or this or how many, and I don't want to really jump into that just yet because it can get blown out of the water really fast, especially online. But you know where I'm going.
You can create a problem with the kids. You're right. They're a certain age, and we want to treat them more mature than they are, and they're not. They're not. And they don't need to hear this, and they don't need to know these things, and that's why. I know you probably had it working with the kids, and I've had it working with kids for 40 years, is that the kids will come in and say, well, can you come? No, because my mom and dad are having a fight. And they'll give you details. And it's like, why do you have those details? Well, they're part of the family. And I'd tell married couples, I said, they're part of the family, but they're not part of the marriage.
Right. And
they're two different things. And you don't pick sides. You don't let your kids pick sides on this stuff.
Right.
And by the way, they're going to play you.
Oh gosh, yes.
Mom said no. Maybe Dad will say yes.
Oh yeah, I was good at that one. I always knew growing up, I'm going to ask my dad first because there was no guarantee my dad would ever say no. If I went to my mom first, I already knew automatically. No, you can't go do that.
Yeah,
I'm sure she's going to watch that.
That was an automatic whipping on us. If they went and asked Mom and she said no, and they asked me and I said. And then I learned, I go, what did your mom say? Okay, let's go. What'd you say? You said no. I said, okay, go.
See, when my dad would say, he would say that, like, did you ask your mom? I was like, no, sir. It's like, do you want to ask your mom? No, sir.
No.
I'm sure she's now hearing this for the first time and probably going to hear about it later, but.
Yeah, but that's,
no, you're right.
They need to see us living it. They need to see us living it in practical ways.
Mm-hmm.
You get to the table and you say a prayer. Why? Because you're thanking God. You're recognizing that you wouldn't have food if God didn't give it to you.
Yes.
And why do we have to pray all the time? Because we're telling God we're thankful for the food that He gave us. Well, Mom went and bought it at the store. She couldn't have bought it at the store if I didn't have a job, and I wouldn't have a job if God didn't give me the strength to do it. Mm-hmm. You see how this all works together? And so now all of a sudden,
there's our building blocks.
Yeah. And so now they're seeing these things and they can grow. And going back to the kids not hearing all this stuff, it's going to come eventually. It's going to come eventually, but I want time. I want time as a parent to be able to get them strengthened.
Right.
And spiritually strengthened in God, and them being able to say, we don't do that. Why? Because God don't want me to do that. Or because the Bible said, or church, or the preacher, or mom and dad, whatever. I want their rationale to be, because God told me no, I don't do that, and I don't live that way, and I don't. You want that. You got two girls. You want that when the girls are going out on a date, that they're going. No. Why? Because God tells us no.
Exactly.
And so I say no, and God tells me yes. And well, why won't you date me? You won't go to church with me. Well, I ain't going to church with you. Then we're not going to date. Why? Because I'm not going to be unequally yoked together with an unbeliever.
Right.
And so you have this I want time. I want time as a parent, because I'm going to live it, and I'm going to start to share it. I'm going to share it with them, and I'm going to point it out to them every chance I get, because the time is going to come when they're going to be confronted with it, and I want them to make the decision. They might make it because mom, out of respect for mom or dad. That's good, or maybe their pastor or youth pastor or whatever, and that's good. But the best answer is God does it. They know God is not a philosophy. God is a person who's watching out for me.
Yeah.
Well, how do you know? I got a testimony my whole life. You can ask my mom or dad. We talked about this. Why? We talk about it all the time. Why? Because I'm supposed to be taught diligently, and they did. And we did talk about it when we sat down and when we went up and when we were by the way. We talked about these things.
He showed me my blessings.
You
He
showed
me this.
Look what God has done.
But it's crazy because I have seen it turn the other way too. It's like, well, you're not letting your kids be immersed in this stuff and letting them be mature and making their own decision.
They're not.
Why are you letting them read the Bible? Well, what do you mean? Well, the Bible talks about murder. It talks about rape. It talks about infidelity. It talks about all this type of stuff.
Yeah.
Why are you letting them get immersed in that?
Yeah. Well,
they're ready to.
That's a good question, and the answer to that is, as they grow older, they can see that the Bible doesn't hedge.
Mm-mm.
It's telling you the truth about how life is, but you're probably not going to. Let's sit down and talk about David sawing his enemies asunder. Probably not. So the parents will say, "What about it this? What about?" You control that.
Mm-hmm.
So what would the church teaches? At least we're not going to go into that kind of detail on that. About maybe they got killed, but that's it. Don't go into any more detail. Well, Goliath got hit in the head by a rock. Well, they've probably been hit in the head by a rock too, but some of them.
Mine has.
But, yeah. So
they got popped.
You go through that, but you don't. They'd say, well, all this, all the murder and all the rape and all the stuff you're talking about in the Bible says they need to see it when the time comes, and God will show it to them when the time comes. But the good part about that is that they're not going to see that God ever condones it.
Right.
Or God says it's okay.
And that's why you can show them that. It's like, it's not teaching you the pros about it. He's saying that these are the cons about it.
A lot of the times when you see that stuff happening, you say, well, so-and-so did that. David committed adultery. Yeah, he was out of the will of God too.
Right. But it's like, I'm not going to stick my daughter into, calculus 2 and she's... No, it doesn't work that way. And the same as the Bible.
Exactly.
You start with your fundamentals first, and then each section you're growing more in depth, learning more about what happened. Now you're seeing even more of the pros and about the faith, and then what cons you shouldn't be doing. And I mean, it's just a foundation that you're building from when they were born to when they're leaving the house one day.
Yeah, you're not going to.
You want them
exactly.
prepared.
You're going to go in and start teaching them. Historical theology or biblical theology, and look, they'll learn it. But what you're learning is, you see what David did, that wasn't right. Right.
But here's
you
another
see
thing.
what Cain did, that was really bad.
Right. Here's another thing, though. You also have to realize you're the parent, they're the child.
Uh-huh.
Don't be the BFF buddy and
God never told us ever to be their friends or to be their parents.
But then I don't have a relationship with my kid or anything. That's false.
That's a false.
I have a very, very strong relationship with my daughter.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you can see it personally. I discipline her when she needs to be disciplined, but I raise her up when she needs to be raised up, and we can talk about everything that we need to talk about. And that's me being the father and her being the daughter.
Yep.
And the same with her mother. She is the exact same way. When she's out of line, she knows it really, really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But then we're not going to be like, I'm gossiping to her about the fight that I had with her mom and stuff, or I'm not, and she's doing the same with me. No, that's mom and dad only, and then she doesn't have to need to know about that, because now you're making her start gaining sides and starting seeing different views, and you're showing her a different path.
Yeah, they don't. It's funny, the parents that go, I don't want to teach them the Bible because it's got all that blood and guts and all that stuff in it. But then you share your marriage problems with them. It's like, that's worse than this.
Right.
And they have
no
context.
Then your kids are thinking, like,
there's no context for that.
Right.
There's context for it in here.
Now you have your kids seeing, which side do I need to be on?
Yeah.
Like, you just created
more presence.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a dangerous place.
It really is, and I feel like honestly we're yet again, and I love it at the same time, because we're not just ending an episode or anything, but we're back at a square where we got to put a pause to this and dive more into it, because there's just so much more you can expand on this, and it's very important too, because these are I think of
Parenting is hard. Parenting is hard.
Parenting is hard
because you have to be the bad guy.
You do, and going back to being real about it, having one kid, I went through my struggles. I went through my ups. I went through a lot of downs with her. I came to you when she had those issues and struggled with my faith about it, because I felt like, why and all that. And you taught me, and this is for everybody to really understand, these kids are his first.
They're his.
And you love him, your love grows more for your children. Yeah. And I struggled with that forever until
he entrusts us with his precious gift, and his there's my goal for my kids, but my goal for my kids can't outweigh God's goal for his kids.
Right.
People like to quote that, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old he won't depart from it. And people get so hung up on that, because they go, well, see, I raised them in church and I did everything, and yet they fell away. It's like, well, that's not what that's talking about.
Man, I have to pause you though.
Yeah, we can bring that up next time.
This could turn easily to like a 3-hour episode, and I know you're not going to be able to sit through that.
Yeah.
But like always, like we were saying, I welcome you to the Holy Dome. 2 are in, 1 is out. Make sure you hit like and subscribe to my Facebook, Instagram. And I will see all of you next time.
God bless you.